Well, let's take some time to move into a place of meditation. So I invite you, if you haven't already, to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that, or if you prefer to place your focus somewhere, such as the sculpture behind me or the flowers in front of me. And then taking in a big, deep breath. And letting that go. Another big, deep breath. And then releasing any of the activity and hurry to get here this morning. Another breath. And as you release that breath, just feel yourself becoming more and more grounded, more and more supported by your chair and supported by spirit. This is a beautiful time of connecting with that divine presence within. I invite you to take into your mind and heart the words from our second song. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. To the deepest kind of love. To the sweetest kind of life. To the deepest kind of love. To the sweetest kind of life. Let's take some time in the silence to allow those words to become present in your heart and soul. To listen to the guidance that is there from Spirit in the silence. It is certainly through taking that deeper dive and spending time in our meditation and prayer time to listen to the guidance of Spirit, knowing without a doubt that we are guided as to how to be ever more loving, more kind for those in need, and also for ourselves. To move to that place of a deeper kind of love, a sweeter kind of life, we are ready. We are ready, and so it is. Amen.
Good to see you here this morning. Always a delight and a joy. I heard a story about a seaman who met a pirate in a bar. Very inspiring. They took turns boasting of their adventures on the high seas. The seaman noticed that the pirate had a peg leg, hook, and an eye patch. The seaman asked, "So how did you end up with the peg leg?" The pirate replied, "We were in a storm at sea, and I was swept overboard into a school of sharks. Just as my men were pulling me out, a shark bit my leg off." "Wow," said the seaman. "What about your hook?" "Well," replied the pirate, "while my men and I were plundering in the Middle East, I was caught stealing from a merchant, and the punishment for theft in the Middle East is the loss of the hand that steals." "Incredible," remarked the seaman. "How did you get the eye patch?" "A seagull dropping fell into my eye," replied the pirate. "You lost your eye to a seagull dropping?" the sailor asked incredulously. "Well," said the pirate, "it was my first day with the hook." You know, these things happen. What can we learn from that inspiring story? Something that I took from it, how easy it is to boast and talk about our accomplishments. And yet, it can be very difficult to boast about our weaknesses, struggles, and failures. We live in a culture where exposing weakness is considered a form of failure. But I want us to look at that in a different light today. We're on part 5 of our 6-part series on feeling our way. Better understanding how to manage our emotions, how to make our feelings serve us instead of us serving them. I liken it to moving through a room in darkness. You're feeling around, trying to make sure you can find your way. And at times our emotions and feelings can be like that, can't they? We're uncertain. Things seem so out of whack, so out of control. And just like moving in a dark room, we can bump into things and actually hurt ourselves. And so if we cannot manage our emotions and our feelings properly, we can bring hurt to ourselves and those around us. So we want to understand that spiritual emotional health depends a great deal on how we process our feelings, especially in times of uncertainty. And as Robin Sharma so well said, the mind is a wonderful servant, but is a terrible master. And so it is. Now, in our previous sessions, first we looked at living from center, properly coordinating spiritual and emotional health by living from center as opposed to what's around us, like the eye of a hurricane where there is peace and serenity, and all around is cataclysm and chaos. Then secondly, we looked at breathing, the role of breathing in processing our emotions, very valuable. Thirdly, we looked at connection, being properly connected to other people, having networks of relationships is essential for developing our emotions in a healthy way. And last week we looked at divine order as a real key to emotional stability, or I called it fitting and footing. When we know where we fit, our footing is more secure, isn't it? And so I want to talk to you today concerning my birthday. my most recent birthday, it was my 65th, and you folks were so wonderful and so kind to me. I had only known you like 2 months, and I was showered with birthday joy. David Lineweber baked me my own apple pie and brought it to me. And then he said, "You must come next door now." I said, "Is that right?" He said, "Yes, come." And you had a surprise party for me. I was so blessed. But you know, the strangest thing that day, all day long, I didn't hear from my mother, my brother, or my son. And I'm thinking, I asked Carolyn, I said, "Is there something wrong with me?" I asked Dumpling, I said, "Dumpling, is there something wrong with me?" Because I didn't hear, these people I hardly know showered me with joy, and 3 of the most important people in my life, I haven't heard a word. Is there something wrong with me? She said, I want you to just think about, Carolyn knows how to tell me stuff. She said, "I want you to realize something." Said, "There's a bulletin board, next door where we're staying." She said, "I want you to get some push pins, or I'll get them for you. And I want you to put every card you got up on that thing." Counted 23 of them. And I was so blessed. And she said, "You got to remember 3 things concerning those 3 people. 1, your mother, though you love her, she's battled mental illness all your life. And she recently had an episode, and she's probably ashamed to talk to you. Secondly, your brother, you love him. I do. I'm crazy about my brother. Said he has issues of his own. You know that. And he loves you. And thirdly, your son right now is facing possible deployment. And no telling what kind of emotions he's dealing with. And my grandson is greatly autistic, and he deals with that a lot." She said, "Keep that all in mind before you get to feeling all low down." I said, "You're right." I said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Instead of sitting and fuming about not hearing from them, I'm going to call them on my birthday." So first I called my mother. "Hey, Mom, remember my birthday? You were there." "Oh, yeah, I forgot your number, hon." I said, "Mom, come on, you didn't forget my number." But we talked, and the awkwardness went away, and had a great conversation. Then I called my brother. I said, "Hey, Bubba, it's me. It's my birthday. I want you to know how happy I am." And he said, "Oh, my God, I can't believe I remembered yesterday." I said, "Timing is important." I said, "Today's the day." He said, "I am so sorry." He just kept apologizing. I kept letting him. It's the thing. When people forget your birthday, making them feel bad about it is highly underrated. It can be very satisfying. So I just kept letting him apologize. Yeah, keep it coming. And, we ended up on a happy note. And then I called my son. He said, "Dad, I am so sorry." He said, "They've had me in a room, in a place today. We are not allowed to have phones in there, and I couldn't text you. I thought about you." I said, "I know you did, bud. I just wanted to call you." So I got to think, I'll just call them. And everything turned out okay. And hopefully next year, they'll do better. But if they don't, it's all right. I'll call them again. There's times, emotionally, we can't really understand why we feel like we feel, can we? Have you ever been feeling low, and you didn't know why? I remember another birthday I had, my 61st. All day long, I felt so down. And I couldn't figure out why. Things were going good. Carolyn took me out and bought me a new cowboy hat. I mean, things were going fine. Why was I feeling so low? I couldn't understand why. But there's times feelings just are, aren't they? Say that with me. Feelings just are. They're just there. You may not even know why. Can't discern any reason. I still can't to this day why I was down all that day. But feelings just are. And to deny how we feel is to deny ourselves. We try to put on a good front, hey, I'm cool, everything's fine. When inside, we may feel very bad or even like we're dying inside. Feelings just are. There's a place for carrying on through emotional pain. I know that. At times you feel down, you say, I got to get up, keep going anyhow. That's where my heart goes out to people that battle clinical depression, because clinical depression, I'm told, thankfully I've never actually suffered from it, but it's a feeling of sadness that cannot be overcome, a feeling like I'll never feel happy again. That's a tremendous difficulty to face, and our heart and prayers go out to those that battle it. But feelings just are. I remember in a martial arts class I attended, there's a young man there, very skilled at a young age, very skilled, very zealous for martial arts, loved hitting things and hitting people. And but he had injured his foot, and grotesquely, it didn't look, right. It's a bad thing when people come, whoa, and that's how his foot looked. And he just kept training anyway. And we're all, man, you need to get that seen. All right, it'll be all right. How many know you can only do that so long till your foot falls off or something? And how many know we can only deal with emotional pain and ignore it for so long until it comes and really bites us? Isn't that true? There's a place for carrying on, but there's a time we've got to deal with our feelings and emotions. And we've got to beware of the trap of toxic positivity. Toxic positivity. Let me talk to you about that from Medical News Today. Toxic positivity is an obsession with positive thinking. Now, before I go on, let me say I'm all for positive. How about you? In fact, it's like the third or fourth word on our statement. Unity is a positive, isn't that right? Path of spiritual living, positive, progressive approach to Christianity. I'm all about positive. I really am. I encourage it. I'm optimistic by nature. I really am. And I believe that's right and healthy and good. But how many know there's a level of positivity that can be very unhealthy? And we want to avoid that. Toxic positivity is an obsession with positive things. You got to be positive no matter what. It is the belief that people should put a positive spin on all experiences, even those that are profoundly tragic. Toxic positivity can silence negative emotions, demean grief, and make people feel under pressure to pretend to be happy even when they're struggling. In some cases, it can be self-imposed. A person may try to appear happy. I've got to appear happy to everybody by presenting everything in a positive light. It can also be external from outside sources, such as when people tell a person who's grieving to move on. Look for the positive. Look for the sunshine in the rain cloud or whatever. Somebody say, well, unity principles. You can't be down. That's toxic positivity. Research around positive thinking generally focuses on the benefits of having an optimistic outlook when experiencing a problem, and this is good and healthy, isn't it? Toxic positivity, by contrast, demands positivity from people regardless of the challenges they're facing, potentially silencing their emotions and deterring them from seeking social support. I remember when I was a little kid, I felt picked on and made fun of at school. And in my family, we weren't encouraged to show a lot of emotion. And my grandmother, I said, Granny, they're laughing at me. Oh, hon, they're not laughing at you. They're laughing with you. I said, I'm not laughing. How is that helpful? It was not helpful at all. That's toxic positivity. Isn't that right? Some other examples. Telling a parent whose child has died to be happy they can at least have children. And let me say, there are things we say, and I don't mean to be insulting or demeaning if you've said some of this, because I have too. How many know at times you don't know what to say? Isn't that right? What can I say to this person? And it could be the thing we say is not helpful to them at all. At times, we don't need to say anything. Just be there. Be a presence. A silent presence can be the most help. Another one. After a catastrophe, well, everything happens for a reason. Is that helpful? I remember after the Parkland shooting, some yahoo said, well, God has a plan. God had a plan for those children to be mowed down and slaughtered? I don't think so. That is not helpful. That's toxic positivity. Or urging someone to focus on the positive aspects of their devastating loss. Telling someone, get over your grief. Focus on all the good you got. Or how about labeling people who always appear positive or do not share their emotions as being stronger or more likable than other people? Anybody remember the show Coach from the 90s? Anybody remember that? Like Coach, Dauber, all those people? Very popular comedy. Coach was very, macho, no emotion was going to be coming out of him. And he had his daughter had a boyfriend named Stuart. Remember Stuart? Stuart was very in touch with his emotions. Stuart would release his emotions based on the occasion, freely. And if something was sad, he'd cry. Got all Coach's nerves big time. And one else show, he said, Stuart, would you stop crying? And Stuart said, it's all right to cry. He said, sure it is if a forklift runs over your foot. Other than that, no. But isn't that how we view, if we hold our emotions, somehow we're stronger and better? Not the case. When we urge people to thrive no matter what adversity they face, such as telling them that they must use, I remember during COVID, well, you can use this time to develop new skills. That may or may not be helpful for people to hear when they're facing all kinds of worries and difficulties. Or brushing off someone's concerns by saying, well, it could be worse. Is that helpful? Probably not. I remember some years ago I got to go on The Price is Right. Well, actually, I went with a friend who wanted to get on The Price is Right and asked if I'd go along. I thought our chances were not great, but I said, if you're paying for the trip, I'm down, and so he was. And so we get there, we wait in line forever. Drew Carey had just taken over as the host not long before. And I remember, during the commercial breaks, he would banter with the audience, make funnies, and stuff. And he asked one fella, he said, you, sir, where are you from? He said, Ann Arbor, Michigan. He said, what do you do in Ann Arbor? Well, I'm currently unemployed, Drew. He said, come on, man, we're trying to have a good time here. Some people, are not really encouraging. He was, of course, just teasing. But so at times, we really don't connect with people in the emotional struggles that they're having. And toxic positivity does not help with that. Because in the final analysis, we must be real. Isn't that true? Yes, we must be positive. We also must be real when we're not particularly feeling positive. Real for one another. Because remember, God, as we understand in unity, God is one presence, one power. Isn't that true? God the good. And we were created in God's image and likeness. Therefore, we were created emotional beings. And emotions are a state of being, are they not? A legitimate state of being. In Ephesians 4, verse 26, Paul said, be angry and sin not. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. This struck me. Be angry. Be what you are. Be the reality of your emotions. How many know at times, and there's a lot of places around here I think you can do that are really quiet and secluded, that you can just go out and just vent. How many know that's perfectly healthy and legitimate? Nothing wrong with that at all. Be angry, as the song says. So if you're mad, get mad. Be angry. But don't let wrong or error thinking prevail. Let anger proceed in a healthy manner. And then resolve it as soon as possible. Paul put it this way, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. You say, I don't think I can make it by this sundown. That's all right. Shoot for the next sundown until you get it. Be angry and sin not. Be, by all means be real. We're allowed to have and feel every emotion, aren't we? Because that's who and what we are. They're neither right nor wrong. They simply are. And negative emotions are not our problem, but they can be an indicator of our problem. And they can have great value in helping us determine what the problem really is. You ever had anybody just go off on you and you realize you haven't really done anything to deserve it? How many know it's not about you? It's about them. There's something there they need to address and deal with. But when I resolve the problem, my negative emotions, that the negative emotions are attached to, those emotions subside. So I submit to you, we can be positive people, and there are many reasons. There's a lot around us. There's warfare. There's all kinds of calamity. But there are reasons to be positive too, aren't there? And we need to recognize those healthy ways. I just saw this morning. This is a newsletter I'm on from of Arnold Schwarzenegger, my idol. And he said all kinds of bits of wisdom I get from Arnold. And he said, this really stood out to me, reason to be positive about our world. People are kinder than you think. Scroll through any news feed for 5 minutes and you'll walk away convinced the world is getting meaner. ruder, and more selfish. It feels this way. It also happens to be wrong. Get this. Researchers dropped wallets in cities around the world. They were returned roughly twice as often as people predicted, suggesting most of us carry an inaccurate picture of how decent other people actually are. And while our perception of kindness might not appear like a big deal, it's more of an influence than we can imagine. Researchers weren't just tracking kindness, they were tracking what we believe about kindness. And the gap between those two things turns out to be one of the most important, one of the most consequential errors we make. Belief isn't just a feeling, it's a predictor. The report found that expecting others to be kind is associated with a larger boost in life satisfaction. How we see the world shapes how we experience it. And most of us have seen it through a lens that's darker than the data indicates. Performing kind acts is linked to greater well-being. Expecting kindness from others carries even more weight. What we assume about people isn't just a personality trait. It's something closer to a daily tax on our happiness or a dividend, depending on how we're running the numbers. This isn't an argument for being naive. It's about a specific, correctable perspective. You've been underestimating people. The research says so. And that underestimation has a cost we probably never accounted for. This is good, isn't it? It's good. We ought to look for the positive. But at times we may not be feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. So that's when we need to be there with support and not talk a whole lot. Isn't that right? And so we can be positive while also giving and receiving support when people are going through hard times. We can be real with one another. And we must. Stay with me if you would. Let's make our affirmation together in closing. Thank you. You've been so kind and attentive. Repeat after me if you would, please. I am a marvelous emotional being. I give love when others are hurting. I receive love when I'm hurting. I am positive. I am real. Yeah, you are. Bless you. Thank you. Have your seats.